And of course, the bazillion permission dialogues and everything that Marco was putting in his story that we just know are inherent in Catalina. I haven't actually had any Catalina problems.
You better knock on some wood real quick.
And Mojave, by the way, which my wife is still running, every once in a while, like it decides to activate the screensaver in such a way that it won't deactivate it, and I have to SSH in and kill the screensaver process. Right, so the Mojave is not without its set of weird bugs too. So I figure I'll just stick with the set of bugs I know in Mojave, and Catalina on my Mac Pro has been fine. But yeah, I saw the new Xcode beta come out, and I'm not down with especially I was about to release an app, not down with the Xcode betas. But I feel you, Marco, with like at a certain point you do have to upgrade, and I guess your time has come. And I think you picked a reasonable time. Like I don't think it'll be a disaster for you.
This is about as long as I make it every year. This actually, I think, is longer than I usually tend to make it, because usually there's some new feature of the OS that I eventually just break down because I want it. And yeah, like Casey, like, you know, your Swift UI previewing thing that you want, like that's a pretty good one of those features. Like it would make sense. Like, you know, the reason I did it was because, okay, now some like pretty important part of my job has become impossible on Mojave. That's motivation enough for me to make the jump. For you, if you're doing a lot of Swift UI stuff, that live preview part of Swift UI is pretty nice. Yep. And it would kind of make sense that, okay, you should probably update if that's a really important thing to you. But, you know, for everyone, the threshold of where that is going to be different. Like, you know, again, like in past years, there have been such compelling features sometimes that you do it for that. For everybody, the threshold is going to be different of like, when do you update to a new OS? And if the OS has compelling features, that threshold could be, you know, pretty soon after release. I mean, you could even be one of those day one cowboys that, you know, just I don't recommend that, but, you know, you could do it. More level-headed approaches usually maybe wait until the 0.1 comes out. You know, that's usually a pretty safe bet most years. But, you know, that threshold moves for various people depending on their priorities and depending on the particular release. You know, my threshold is like, well, I can stay on the old version as long as it doesn't impede anything I really need to do. And that was true until today. And it's no longer true, and so here I am.
I'm sorry, but does that mean I'm allowed to, dads? Finally, please?
I mean, if you really are, you're still doing Swift UI stuff and you want to have the preview, I suppose. That you have an actual reason to do it. Before, you didn't have any reason, though. I mean, and you weren't telling us about the details of the app you were making, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we should quickly mention things that would perhaps require Catalina, since this is related. Swift Playgrounds is out for the Mac, and it requires Catalina because it's not Combine. It's, what's the other one? Catalyst. There we go. It took me a minute. So that's really exciting. I haven't tried it yet because I'm not on Catalina, but this is super cool. And generally speaking, from what I've read, it sounds like it's a pretty decent Mac app, which is exciting as well. It's not flawless, but it's pretty decent all in all. So, hey, that's a win as far as I'm concerned.
I've seen some people complaining that it is Swift Playgrounds on the Mac, like literally, you know, Swift Playgrounds, the thing they demoed on the iPad. Hey, look at this. You can learn how to program. This is a cool little robot. You can make it hop around. Like all the stuff that you saw them demo on the iPad at WWC all those years ago. It's that on the Mac. But I think when people saw it, they were thinking, oh, it'll be like Swift Playgrounds, but all the APIs will be Mac APIs. And that's not the case. This is a Catalyst app. And inside the app, like someone put a screenshot of trying to like instantiate an NS color, and it was like, no, I think you mean UI color. I'm like, oh, like, yeah, it's Playgrounds like you saw on the iPad on your Mac, literally through Catalyst, which is great. And it's cool. And it's, you know, I downloaded it, and, you know, it's exactly what you would think it would be. It's convenient if you don't have an iPad and you have a kid who wants to do this type of thing now, but you do have a Mac now, they can have a way to do it. I was confused at first when I saw like the headlines flying around, because I'm like, wait, Playgrounds have been on the Mac forever. I use them all the time when I'm developing in Xcode and I want to try out a quick little thing. I bring up a Playground, I type some stuff in it, and it works fine. But then I remembered, no, it's a thing with the robot. Yeah, what is the name of the thing in Xcode? That's called Playgrounds, but not Swift Playgrounds. What is that thing called?
It's just Playgrounds, I believe. It's a new playground. That's it.
I mean, yeah, you just do, from the file menu, file new what, and one of the things you can make is new project, new file. You can also make a new playground, and it makes a little thing where you can type in code and it runs it in real time and shows you the results on the right-hand side. Everything they demoed in a different WWDC session all those years ago. But it doesn't have a distinct name, and it's not its own application. It's just a playground file for Xcode. Anyway, this is Swift Playgrounds for the Mac. Some people have been poking around and finding all the non-Mac aspects of it, but it's just like any other Catalyst file. Like the keyboard shortcuts don't work the way you expect. Like the responder chain is weird. The window layering is weird. I think someone was saying if you bring up a window and hit Command W, it closes the window behind the active window, which is, not right. There's many things about iOS applications that are running on the Mac through Catalyst that is not quite right. But it's better to have... This is an example of Catalyst, quote unquote shovelware, but like you wouldn't have this app at all on the Mac. So maybe the one you got is not super duper Mac-like, but it's better than not having it on the Mac. And the app itself, once you're inside it, functions just like you would see it on the iPad, only you get to use the mouse and a keyboard. So even though Catalyst continues to not be a shining example of good Mac applications, it is still vastly preferable to have a so-so Catalyst port of an app than to not have it at all, especially for an app like this, where it's like, this is not a professional app where you're trying to say this is the new way all Mac apps are going to work. This is just allowing people who have a Mac to use a cool application that was previously only on the iPad.
I don't have any problem with that. In fact, I'm with you. I think overall, theoretically, it's a good thing. Now, in practice, Catalyst has had a really slow start. And that's due to lots of reasons that the more Apple uses it, the more that they will see and feel these reasons, and the sooner they are likely to get fixed. So that's actually a good thing. Like if Apple's going to keep bringing over apps like this that are not critical apps to macOS, but have some utility if they are present, bring as many over as they want to, and have them use Catalyst, and they can see, how incomplete it is. They can feel like, oh, this actually is kind of crappy. Like, and there have been some recent changes. Like, I don't know if we're gonna get to this today, but like they have introduced a new date picker style that doesn't use the stupid iOS wheels. Finally, like in whatever the new Catalina beta is. And they recently announced, we didn't cover this yet either. They recently announced, I think last week, that you'll now be able to build Catalyst apps that use the same bundle ID, which is pretty important for lots of reasons, especially like sharing a purchase, as your iOS app. When Catalyst was unveiled last summer, it forced you to have this big like Mac Catalyst prefix on the bundle ID, so you couldn't your app that you ran on the Mac could not have the same ID for store and technical purposes as the app that you had on iOS. So you couldn't do things like one purchase gets you all apps. And I think the reason for that was simply because they hadn't set that all up yet, like on the store backend and everything else. So they were forcing this thing. And so like Catalyst, as it was released, was pretty incomplete. They are very slowly chipping away at Catalyst's various shortcomings and problems. And so the more Apple ships their own apps, like Swift UI for it, the more they're going to feel these issues and hopefully prioritize them. So I don't personally have really any feelings on this particular app, but hey, it's a fun thing for people to use, and if you're learning and whatever else, it's easier than Xcode. So, good for them.
Yeah, it's a very polished, like the application itself is like, a very polished example of like a learning to program type thing. Because I remember a lot of those learning to program things from my youth. Obviously, this is ancient and things, but like just in terms of the production values, adjusting for the times and the technology stack, it's a very fancy, well done, sort of high production value in Hollywood parlance, since we're talking about Hollywood this episode, high production value example of learning to program. Like it's, like the production values are too high. It's like, this is not is it really important to learning to program to have this adorable, of an interface and these kinds of graphics? No, it's not. It's just typical Apple, like over polish, overkill. And it's great. It's all the more disappointing when I couldn't get any of my kids interested in it, because they were just, at the time I tried to show it to them, they were like, not interested, don't care about the robot, don't care about typing things. Why would I ever do this? Why wouldn't I just use an analog stick to move the little robot around? Like they said, video games, anyway. But anyway, I think if kids are into programming and they get their hands on something like this at the right age, it can be amazing. And I wish I had something like this, because the things I had at my disposal had much lower production values and are much less friendly.
Yeah, no, I very much admire Apple for doing this, and I think it is a really nice move to help people teach their kids, like you were saying, or teach themselves. And, the playgrounds as a scratch pad for trying, to write code, that does exist in Xcode. And it's for somebody like the three of us is a better answer. But for somebody who is, for somebody who is just trying to learn how to write code, it's so good. And I would never turn to this. I would just go to an Xcode playground. But if I was trying to show Declan how to write code, I would definitely use this. And I think that that's extremely cool. And I think it should be commended that Apple still cares enough to do this sort of thing.
The sad thing about me trying to teach my kids to program is that eventually my son did get into programming more or less on his own, because, another example of kids not wanting to hear it from their parents, but if they just code it on their own, they're into it, right? And now he's taking courses in high school, programming courses in high school, and he's doing it in NetBeans. Like, we had to install NetBeans on the Macs because it's Java.
Oh, God.
And you have to install this NetBeans IDE, which is this ancient thing, and then Java doesn't come on the Mac anymore. So he turned his nose up at Swift Playgrounds, which are like, a glass of ice water in hell compared to NetBeans.
Mm-hmm.
Are they? I still think Swift is a terrible beginner's language, but that's just me, I guess.
It's better than Java, I can tell you that. And anyway, he's doing Java now. He's not doing Swift. Yes. He's doing Java in NetBeans. Because that's what's on the computer science AP test is still in Java because, lags behind the rest of the world, I suppose. So he's got to, learn and use Java.
What should it be instead?
I don't know. I mean, I would feel better about C for that, or like a pseudo language. Like, is it computer science is not about, computer science is as much, as they say, is as much about computers as astronomy is about telescopes.
Right.
So like, if you're learning actual computer science, the details of any particular language should be immaterial. And I understand you have to have something to do the test with, but it could just be like an algorithms test. I don't know. AP computer science, as far as I'm aware, did not exist when I was in school. So I have no idea what he's in for, but he's doing it, and I installed NetBeans. So there you go.
Yeah, I wish it existed when I was in high school.
Agreed. Can we just state publicly that you are aware that there are other better Java IDEs that exist, and that is not the point?
I'm not choosing to install NetBeans. It's like, it's like anything in school. Here's the calculator you have to buy. Here's the IDE you have to install for this class.
Exactly.
Like, he's not picking this. Like, this is, and it's not just NetBeans. It's like a specific old version of NetBeans that really is angry about both Mojave and Catalina. It's not as bad as me trying to install Minecraft mods, but it's close.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Java is no worse a learning language than Swift.
I don't think I agree.
I think Swift is way better than Java. Way better.
Yeah, I agree.
Million miles better.
As a language I'd want to use today, I agree. But a learning language has different needs, and I
think as a learning language as well.
I think they're both mediocre learning languages. Honestly, I think I would want to go something simpler and more forgiving, like either JavaScript or maybe like Python, something like that.
JavaScript is too weird. It's a reasonable second choice, but honestly, I think Swift is a great language to learn programming in. Of all the real languages out there that we can pick, because I think both Python, which would be my other pick, and JavaScript are a little bit too weird in the basics. And if I was teaching a course, I wouldn't want to have to explain the weird basics, whereas I think I could go a long time without explaining any weirdness for just doing the basics in Swift.
Yeah, until you do something wrong.
Yeah. Anyway, there's no JavaScript Playgrounds app like this, so there you go.
We are sponsored this week by Bluevine. Running a business is filled with unexpected events that require sudden cash flow. Bluevine can help you secure cash fast. Applying online is easy and takes just a few minutes. Bluevine is an easy, fast way to help support your business growth with a line of credit of up to $250,000. Whether you need money to offset some upfront costs, secure new inventory, or maybe pay an unexpected expense, through Bluevine, you can help yourself and your business stay secure for any reason. There's no fee to set up your line of credit, and Bluevine never charges maintenance or prepayment fees. Applying is easy. Just go to getbluevine.com/ATP, fill out a few simple details, and you're done within minutes. Seeing an offer will not affect your credit score, and once approved, funds can be received in as quickly as 24 hours. So you can have peace of mind knowing that funds can be drawn with a click of a button for any business expense. Bluevine has helped more than 20,000 customers and has delivered over $2.5 billion in funds to businesses. Bluevine also has advisors available by phone to answer any questions you might have and help meet your business needs. With an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau and nearly 5-star review on Trustpilot, see why thousands of satisfied business owners have chosen Bluevine as their go-to source for financing. Bluevine is offering our listeners a special limited-time promotion of a $100 gift card when you take out a loan or open a line of credit with Bluevine. So go to getbluevine.com/ATP for more details. All you have to do, once again, getbluevine.com/ATP and apply. That's quick, easy, and meaningful help to your business in as little as 24 hours. This promotional offer is subject to terms and conditions that can be found at getbluevine.com/ATP. Thank you so much to Bluevine for sponsoring our show.
Shall we do some Ask ATP?
Let's do it.
So we start with Anthony. Back in Windows, on the basis of security, people were discussing having antivirus software like AVG or Kaspersky or etc. on their Windows machines, but there weren't any Mac owners that did the same. Some of the Windows users mentioned that they only use Windows Defender as their defense to malware. It made me realize that macOS doesn't really have any in-your-face software that is quote-unquote protecting you at all times. Anthony writes, I understand macOS has built-in security like Xprotect and Gatekeeper. Is this software essentially doing the same thing as other antivirus software? Also, do you think that macOS is really better at defending malware or viruses beyond the fact that there are less machines running macOS versus Windows? If so, how? There's a lot here, but no, there's no real antivirus that comes with macOS that I'm aware of, or am I crazy?
I mean, as this person mentioned, just Xprotect, really. But Xprotect is really doing, I think it is basically serving as antivirus. Like it is a system thing that runs in the background all the time that silently downloads updates from Apple whenever there is one, and that can be used to target and block the execution of binaries with certain signatures. And that's what antivirus programs do, as far as I know.
A misstep. The reputational damage can live as long as the people it lives inside, which is not.
But nobody can affect the broadest possible swath of their customer base. Like, it isn't that they continue just shipping one model with this. Like, if it was only ever the 12-inch MacBook, it would maybe get a reputation for, okay, this keyboard kind of sucks in this tiny little laptop, but oh well, we'll buy a bigger laptop, we can avoid that keyboard. But they didn't do that. They put it in all of them. So everyone who buys Mac laptops, which is most people who buy Macs, was forced to have this keyboard for this entire time span. So this was a significant problem, and this affected a large portion of their customer base for a very long time. The damage from that is way bigger than, like, if the new Mac Pro had a problem. Sorry, John. Like, if the new Mac Pro had a problem, then that would affect a very small customer base, and probably for not that long of a time. Whereas, like, if the laptops have a problem that affects lots of people, and this problem has lingered for years. Like, I'm happy to try to place blame on them for shipping this keyboard in the first place, but just as critical of an error was letting it sit for so long without replacing it.
Yeah, the interesting thing is you can actually be cranky and immature and bitter about it and still save yourself. So I was thinking, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about other examples of where Apple has screwed up. AntennaGate. They made a phone that had, the story was if you wrapped your hand around it, the signal couldn't get out, which was true, and you could demonstrate it. And Apple was cranky about it, particularly Steve Jobs, saying, but you could do that to BlackBerry phones too, and it's not fair, and blah, blah, blah. And they had that press conference, like, fine, you want a bumper? We'll give everyone free bumpers. Like, he was just so, immature and not magnanimous about it at all. And he was just mad that he even had to have this press conference and give people free bumpers or whatever. But two things were different about that thing. Or first of all, they did it fairly quickly. The AntennaGate story came out, and they didn't, insist that there was nothing wrong for 3 years. Like, they fairly quickly had an actual press conference about it and tried to fix it. And the next thing they did was, you can be damn sure the phones after that didn't have that exact same problem. They changed the designs of their phone to be better in that regard. Whether or not they thought it was fair or thought that the previous phone actually was no worse than any other phone or whatever, it was kind of like Bendygate too, same deal. Learn from it quickly, and in the very next phone, make it less bendy. And from that point on, have this as be one of your criteria, right? I mean, like, it wasn't addressed as like, well, they did such a good job and they just had perfect PR. Like, Steve Jobs was cranky about it, right? He was the face of the company, and he seemed like indignant that you could be complaining about this, which is not even really a problem. But his attitude did not dictate that the company, you know what, this isn't a problem. We're not going to do anything about it. No, they still had a press conference. They still gave people free bumpers, right? If and that's the bar. Like, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be like, I'm a saint, and if I ever do anything wrong, I will be, immediately contrite, and I will offer a sincere apology, and I will right all the wrongs. You don't have to be that good, but time to action is key. Take reasonably appropriate action, learn from your mistakes, and do it quickly. And you can even be cranky. And now, how many people think iPhones have a reputation that if you hold them in your hand, they don't get a signal? You never hear that. Like, even from people who remember Antennagate, that is not a slam on iPhones. You say iPhones, aren't those the phones that don't get a good signal when you hold them in your hand? Nobody says that. But that was a big story at the time, and they didn't gracefully nip it in the bud, but they did act quickly and fairly decisively, and did not continue to ship iPhones with the exact same performance characteristics for years and years. And so, I think obviously that was a different Apple and at a different time and a different scope. And the iPhone wasn't as big at that time. And there's many things about the current situation that are different. But I think Apple itself has shown good examples of quickly learning from and recovering from its mistakes in an imperfect way, such that you avoid this sort of long-term unfair, put scare quotes around that if you want, reputational damage.
I just don't get it. I don't understand why they would double and then triple and then quadruple down on it. And as you both were saying, I don't understand why we don't have this across the line, across the entire laptop line. And the answer is because it's a big ship that moves slowly, and I'm not appreciating how challenging it is to make these changes and have them be global changes, not only in the figurative sense of global across their line, their laptop line, but global in the sense of literally these devices are shipped around the world. But, I mean, they seem to be able to do it for phones. I mean, not exactly the same thing, but similar things, like you were saying. Like, we can make it work for phones. We ship a hell of a lot more phones than we do computers.
Well, I think it's largely about attitude and about economics. Like, it probably took them a longer time than I bet we would have guessed to even decide, you know what, this was the wrong move. Obviously, no one took the feedback in 2015 on the 12-inch. No one cared. Obviously, the high failure rate and low manufacturing yield of that initial 2015 keyboard, that information didn't really go anywhere either. Obviously, there was an attitude that this is the way forward, this is great, period. By the way, that same attitude seems to apply to the touch bar still. They still think the touch bar is a universal good. Because if they didn't think the touch bar was a universal good, they would make it optional. But they don't. So clearly they think, why would anybody not like the touch bar? And I think that's still the wrong move. Regardless, like, something kept that attitude going of, this keyboard is great. This is fine. We have no problems with this. Through all those revisions and revisions, because they didn't want to admit to themselves properly that they were wrong. And then secondly, there's a huge economic thing of, like, you're going to have this manufacturing line running for X years. It's going to cost you, X dollars to retool and redesign or re-engineer a different keyboard into this line. And I have a feeling they just spreadsheeted it. And at some point, somebody decided, hey, you know what? It would be too expensive to fix this faster. And so we're going to fix it on our timeline. And in the meantime, oh well, we'll do a repair extension program and sweep it under the rug. Problem is, that didn't work. We are sponsored this week by Linode, my favorite web host. Look, no matter what you need, if you need servers, whether it's from a personal project or a hobby thing or learning how to use Linux, all the way up to larger scale things like running an entire app, like I run all of Overcast at Linode, whatever it is you need from small to big, Linode has the pricing, the support, and the scale that you need for your project. They have 11 data centers worldwide now, and they're always adding more. They recently added Sydney, Australia. All of these data centers have enterprise-grade hardware. They just launched an S3-compatible storage option recently, and it's all backed by their next-generation network. Linode delivers the performance that you expect at a price that you honestly don't. You can see for yourself today using code ATP2020 to get a $20 credit. And that'll give you access to everything they have to offer. You have native SSD storage on all their servers, this 40 gigabit network behind behind it all. All these servers come with root access. You can install whatever software you need. You can configure everything with their API to automate things like expansion or contraction. They have a CLI tool in Python. I use it all the time. And all this comes in starting at just $5 a month. This is great for people who just want to get started, who you want to try things out. And all their plans from, I use mostly the bigger ones, but all their plans, in my opinion, are the best value in the business. And I've been with them for almost a decade. And the entire time, they've stayed the best value in the business. Whenever new technology gets better or gets cheaper, they give you more for your money. So it's super great to be a Linode customer. I've been with them for all this time. I run all of Overcast there. I run Markets.org there. I run the live streaming server for this podcast there. Everything I run there, I'm very happy with. See for yourself, linode.com/ATP. Using promo code ATP2020 to get a $20 credit. That could be 4 months free on that $5 a month plan. So once again, linode.com/ATP, promo code ATP2020. Thank you so much to Linode for hosting all my stuff and sponsoring our show.
You posted some interesting things to Instagram today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to get away with this.
We'll close out the crank chapter here. This will be the last thing I'm cranky about tonight.
So I look at my Instagram stories at some point in the evening, and I see that you were lamenting the fact that you couldn't debug something in Xcode, if I'm not mistaken, in the beta specifically. And then you were lamenting the fact that it required Catalina. And then next thing I know, you're doing the thing that you swore that I was not allowed to do, Dad. And you're installing Catalina on a device. I'm presuming it's your iMac Pro. Did you buy your Mac Pro before or after this travesty happened?
I haven't had time yet.
Are you going to?
I don't know. My fan noise is back. I still got to figure that out. But
oh no,
I'm so annoyed. I've been resisting Catalina on my main iMac Pro. I've had it on my laptop because it came with it, and it's been, I've been dealing with it. It's fine. But as I said before, I didn't see any reason to upgrade to Catalina, and there only seemed to be downsides and risks, no real upsides. And well, now I finally had to do it because I upgraded my phone to the 13.4 beta, which presumably sometime in the next few weeks will become the 13.4 release of iOS. And you can't develop for that phone with Xcode 11.3. You can only develop for it, which means I can only do like the build and run and install development builds on my phone easily from the new beta of Xcode 11.4, which requires Catalina. They do this every year, where at some point halfway through the year or so, they make the newest version of Xcode require the newest macOS. And that is what finally pushes developers who have been reluctant to install the new version of macOS to finally do it. Because while it is possible to continue doing my job without being able to instantly run development builds on my phone, it becomes much more cumbersome. And it's just, the cost of that to me is too great. So I bit the bullet and I upgraded on podcast day, mere hours before the podcast.
Very bold maneuver.
Yes. And here I am running Catalina on my desktop finally. So I'm finally fully upgraded, reluctantly.
I've been really eyeing, both side-eyeing and excited-eyeing Catalina on account of, starting to do some SwiftUI work, and it would be so much nicer, as we discussed last episode, to be able to do that on my iMac Pro. But my two dads, that's a reference, John, have told me that I am not allowed to upgrade to Catalina, so I haven't. And here it is. Now, I am the only holdout on Mojave, is that correct? Because, John, you have to run it on your Mac Pro, correct?
Yeah, my wife's iMac is still on Mojave, and I thought about upgrading her, but I'm like, you know what? Just don't. Just like I don't have many Catalina problems. Like I had one weird freak out where I don't know if it was Xcode related. I was always running Xcode, so I don't know whether to blame that. But at a certain point, like, how did it manifest? I would select. I was fast user switching between people to take screenshots, and I selected a different account from the fast user switching menu. And nothing happened.
Cool.
I was trapped. I could not switch to another user. And I was like, okay, this means time to restart. Like no error message, nothing in the console, nothing like it just, you would pick something from fast user switching and it would just blink and then nothing would ever happen. And that I said, okay, this is a sign I need to restart. And so I did, and everything was fine after that. But other than that, and of course the bazillion permission dialogues and everything that Marco was putting in his story that we just know are inherent in Catalina, I haven't actually had any Catalina problems.
You better knock on some wood real quick.
And Mojave, by the way, which my wife is still running, every once in a while, like it decides to activate the screensaver in such a way that it won't deactivate it, and I have to SSH in and kill the screensaver process. Right, so the Mojave is not without its set of weird bugs too. So I figure I'll just stick with the set of bugs I know in Mojave, and Catalina on my Mac Pro has been fine. But yeah, I saw the new Xcode beta come out, and I'm not down with especially I was about to release an app, not down with the Xcode betas. But I feel you, Marco, with like at a certain point you do have to upgrade, and I guess your time has come. And I think you picked a reasonable time. Like I don't think it'll be a disaster for you.
This is about as long as I make it every year. This actually, I think, is longer than I usually tend to make it, because usually there's some new feature of the OS that I eventually just break down because I want it. And yeah, like Casey, like, you know, your Swift UI previewing thing that you want, like that's a pretty good one of those features. Like it would make sense. Like, you know, the reason I did it was because, okay, now some like pretty important part of my job has become impossible on Mojave. That's motivation enough for me to make the jump. For you, if you're doing a lot of Swift UI stuff, that live preview part of Swift UI is pretty nice. Yep. And it would kind of make sense that, okay, you should probably update if that's a really important thing to you. But, you know, for everyone, the threshold of where that is going to be different. Like, you know, again, like in past years, there have been such compelling features sometimes that you do it for that. For everybody, the threshold is going to be different of like, when do you update to a new OS? And if the OS has compelling features, that threshold could be, you know, pretty soon after release. I mean, you could even be one of those day one cowboys that, you know, just I don't recommend that, but, you know, you could do it. More level-headed approaches usually maybe wait until the 0.1 comes out. You know, that's usually a pretty safe bet most years. But, you know, that threshold moves for various people depending on their priorities and depending on the particular release. You know, my threshold is like, well, I can stay on the old version as long as it doesn't impede anything I really need to do. And that was true until today. And it's no longer true, and so here I am.
I'm sorry, but does that mean I'm allowed to, dads? Finally, please?
I mean, if you really are, you're still doing Swift UI stuff and you want to have the preview, I suppose. That you have an actual reason to do it. Before you didn't have any reason, though. I mean, and you weren't telling us about the details of the app you were making, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And it requires Catalina because it's